All right, today we are diving into a Supreme Court case that seriously reads like a legal thriller. You've got a wedding, a pretty wild accusation, and a single lie that threatens to bring the whole thing crashing down. This is a story all about what happens when the very foundation of a marriage is built on something that just isn't true.
So here's the central question, and it's a real head-scratcher. Can you actually use your own lie as a get-out-of-jail-free card for a marriage? It's a fascinating moral and legal puzzle, and we're about to see how it played out in the very real story of Jose and Felisa Dayot.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The date is November 24th, 1986. Jose and Felisa get married at Pasay City Hall. Looks like a pretty standard civil wedding, right? Well, the story behind what happened on this day would end up being argued over in courtrooms for years and years.
Now, this whole thing, and I mean the entire case, boils down to one very specific legal detail. Normally, you absolutely need a marriage license to get married in the Philippines. But there's this one exception. If you've been living together like husband and wife for at least 5 years, you can skip the license and just sign a sworn statement saying so. That little exception is the key to this whole story.
And this right here is where the story splits into two completely different realities. After the wedding, you get two totally contradictory versions of what actually went down. It is the ultimate he said, she said showdown.
I mean, you couldn't get two more different stories. On one side, you have Jose, who claims the whole thing was a sham. He says he was tricked into signing what he thought were just some papers to help Felisa, his landlady, claim a package. He insists he had no clue it was a marriage contract until months down the road. But Felisa's version? Completely different. She said they were in a loving relationship, they'd been living together, and they both decided to make it official. A total clash of realities.
And here's the kicker. The timing on this is, well, suspicious, to say the least. See, Jose didn't immediately run to a lawyer when he supposedly found out about this sham marriage back in 1987. No, instead, he went and married another woman in 1990. It was only after Felisa hit him with a bigamy charge in 1993 that he suddenly decided to fight the validity of their marriage. It really makes you wonder what was really going on, right?
So, with these two wildly different stories, the case finally makes its way into the court system. Let's take a look at how the first couple of courts handled this mess.
At first, the decisions were super clear. In 2000, the regional trial court looked at all the evidence and boom, they sided with Felisa. Marriage is valid. Fast forward 5 years to 2005, the case goes up to the Court of Appeals and they come to the exact same conclusion. So for nearly 2 decades, legally speaking, the marriage was rock solid.
And the courts weren't just disagreeing with Jose. They basically thought his story was unbelievable. The trial court literally used the word implausible. That's a strong word, essentially saying his whole tale about being tricked into signing a marriage contract just didn't hold water.
And you can see why they felt that way. For starters, after Jose supposedly discovered the fraud, he went and listed Felisa as his wife on official documents. Even crazier, his own sister, who was a witness at the wedding, testified that he signed the contract willingly. And to top it all off, he filed his complaint way too late, years after the legal deadline for that kind of claim had already passed.
So, at this point, you'd think the case is over, right? Done deal. The marriage is valid. But just when you think it's all settled, the story takes a wild and totally unexpected turn. Get this, the very same Court of Appeals that had already confirmed the marriage took another look and completely reversed itself. Now, that is something you do not see every day in the legal world. It was a huge signal that something fundamental had shifted in how they saw the case.
So what was it? What could possibly be so powerful that would make a court flip its own ruling? It wasn't about who was more believable. It all came down to a single, cold, hard, undisputed fact.
And that fact was the number 5.
5 years. That's the magic number for cohabitation you need to skip the marriage license. And here's the bombshell. Everyone agreed. Both Jose and Felisa admitted they first met in early 1986 and got married in November of that same year. They had lived together for, at most, a matter of months, which means that sworn affidavit, the one their whole marriage was based on, it was false.
With the lower courts now at odds, the case was kicked all the way up to the top. It was time for the Supreme Court of the Philippines to make the final, definitive call. And the question before them was massive. Does one lie on that affidavit, just one false statement, have the power to completely erase an entire marriage as if it never existed?
The court's answer was crystal clear, and honestly, pretty brutal. They declared that if the main statement in that affidavit, the 5 years of living together, is a lie, then the affidavit is nothing more than a mere scrap of paper. It has no force, no effect. It's like it was never even there to begin with.
Let me walk you through their thinking, because it's really a straightforward chain of logic. 1. You need a marriage license, period. 2. There's an exception, but you have to follow its rules exactly. 3. The Dayots did not follow the 5-year rule. 4. That means their exception was invalid, which means they effectively had no license. And the final domino to fall, a marriage without a license is void from the very start.
Okay, I know what you're probably thinking, because I was thinking it too. Wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. Jose was part of the lie, and now he gets to benefit from it to get out of the marriage and maybe even dodge a bigamy charge? How is that fair?
Well, the Supreme Court had an answer for that, and it's a huge concept in law. They basically said, look, feelings about fairness don't matter when the law is black and white. The law about marriage licenses is super specific. It doesn't have a little asterisk that says, unless you're trying to get away with something. The rule is the rule.
And with that, the hammer came down. The Supreme Court declared the marriage between Jose and Felisa Dayot to be void ab initio. That means it was legally invalid from the moment it happened. In the eyes of the law, it never existed.
So what are the big lessons here? Well, first, that 5-year cohabitation rule, it's not a suggestion, it's a hard requirement. Second, lying on that affidavit isn't a small mistake, it's a deal breaker. It also shows us that the law puts the formal rules of marriage above all else, even if the outcome feels a bit off. And maybe most importantly, a challenge to a marriage based on a missing license can be brought up at any time. It never expires.
And that's where this whole saga leaves us. The law was applied perfectly. No question about it. The logic is sound. But is the result actually just? It's one of those fascinating cases where what's legal and what feels fair don't quite line up, and it really makes you think.